Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 361 of the MTGGoldfish podcast. I'm Seth, probably better known as Saffron Olive, and we have the full crew here this week, kicking things off with the owner of MTGGoldfish, Richard. How are you this fine Monday, Richard?
Good morning, Seth. Recovering from the holidays.
Yes. Had lots of good food. Got to see some family and friends, so that was nice. We got another co-host in Krim. Krim, how are you? How were your holidays this past week?
Oh, it was pretty good. I mean, I ended the holiday weekend with getting to a concert, which now my leg is super swollen because I went. So I got done.
What, you moshing, Krim? Are you jumping in the pit?
I got out of the mosh pit, and because I was in the center, and then so I was like, all right, I'm done moshing, so I'm gonna crowd surf to the front. So I crowd surfed to the front, and then I guess as I'm getting lifted over the railing, I guess content warning here, I might have overextended my knee. It bent in a direction it probably shouldn't have, and then it scraped down the side of the railing. So my leg is super swollen right now, but hey, we're good.
Ouch. Yeah, that sounds like a good concert then. All things considered, it sounds like a blast.
I passed the youth check, if I
You're so young, Krim. So young.
Did you, Krim? You made it into the mosh pit, but at the same time, you hurt yourself trying to get out of it. That sounds a little old to me. You're on the fence, yeah.
But I'm able to walk currently, even if my leg is as big as I am right now.
So anyway, today we're going to be taking a deep delve into Modern, talking about how Wizards can fix Modern, our ideas for fixing Modern. So that's going to be our big topic for today. Before we get into it, though, a reminder. If you need to sell some of your Magic cards, our show today is brought to you by Card Conduit, and they're the easiest way to sell your cards. If you ever get tired of the hassles of buy listing, Card Conduit lets you skip them. You can use their curated service and send in as many cards as you want with a buy list value of $1 or more and pay just a 5% fee. And if you want to do a bit of work, you can use their sorted service and pay just a 2% fee. And either way, you're going to get a detailed report with the results and a fast payment once your order is processed. And you can even get another 10% off by heading over to cardconduit.com/MTGGoldfish. Card Conduit, they're the easiest way to sell your Magic cards. So thank you to Card Conduit for supporting the show. And let's talk some Modern. And let's start with the current state of Modern and what's wrong with Modern. If we're going to try to fix Modern or make suggestions for fixing Modern, I think that's where we got to start off. So for both of you, what's your current perception of the Modern format? What's wrong with Modern?
I mean, I've pretty obviously stated that it has become Yu-Gi-Oh, right? Modern is actually just Yu-Gi-Oh in the current year, because nothing actually costs anything. There's no resource system. So that key thing, everybody loves to talk about, is a core part of Magic's identity, which is the resource system of mana, is not used, or it's inaccurately represented. So Leyline Binding, 1 mana. Fury is a 5 mana card. Sure, there's air quotes around the 5 there. It's 0. And I think that's kind of a big problem.
What do you think, Richard?
I linked you guys a random result over the weekend. I was just looking at results, and then I had to double check to see if it was a bug, because the decks 1 to 5 were Rakdos Scam.
No, that's just Modern.
I was like, what? Scam is 21% of the meta. The next deck is 7% at Crashing Footfalls. And there's been so much debate and talk about Scam. Scam's so easy to beat. Scam's not overpowered, etc., etc. But here's the thing. It's such a terrible deck to play against. You don't want this to be the deck of your format, even if it sucks. Let's say the win rate is 46% or something. It's just overrepresented. People just like to play it, whatever. It's a terrible deck to have to sit down against across match after match after match. So it's if Lantern Control was the face deck of the format. You just don't want it, right? So regardless of the power level of Scam, because I think there's a lot of debate on whether it's actually a good deck or not, it is so prevalent, and you need to kind of stamp it out, because we don't want people to basically not play Magic, sit down, have your whole hand stripped away, and then top deck. You don't want everyone doing that. So I think Scam is the problem. It's just an unfun deck to be 20% of the meta. 1 to 5 matches is Scam.
Yeah, that's actually the concern I have about like the Discover combo decks and Pioneer and Explorer. It's not that I think they're overpowered or unbeatable. It's that like if they actually end up being the most popular deck in the format, it's just like a very annoying removal checky play pattern they have to play against constantly. So I think Scam's kind of the same way. Like whether it is or isn't overpowered, whether it is or isn't beatable, in some sense, that's not really relevant if people just really dislike playing against it. And it's an annoying play pattern, and it is. Like to get double, triple Thoughtseize by turn 2 is not something that most people are like gonna be excited about. And if you dig into the numbers of the meta, you mentioned like 21% for Scam. Some people have been doing like winners metagame percentages where they've been looking just at decks at like top 32 and like chopping out some of the league data and stuff. And that had been up to 40% in some recent months. So it's like actually, if anything, the metagame percentage we have that looks at the whole meta might underestimate just how prevalent this is at the top tables in a lot of tournaments. And 20% is a huge, huge number for the modern format. Like normally that is unheard of for a deck to maintain a 20% metagame percentage. In a format like Modern and Standard, it happens regularly, but Modern's so big, has so many cards, so many decks, that just usually doesn't happen. So I think that Scam might be a problem. Like Scam is a problem, but I would say that's not actually the problem. I think that problem might actually be more specific than that, or at least one of the big problems. I think it might just be the Evoke Elementals, period. Like if you want to look at a different piece of data, we can look at the most played cards in Modern. We have that over on MTGGoldfish.com. And right now, Fury is in 46% of decks, which is kind of ridiculous. And remember, this is Modern. This is a format where Punishing Fire was banned explicitly because they were worried it was going to keep small creature decks out of the format. It's a format where Umezawa's Jitte is not allowed in the format because they're worried it's going to be too punishing against small creature decks. Look at the meta. They're like, you can't play small creature decks because half of the decks almost in the format are playing Fury, which is way more punishing than Punishing Fire, despite what its name suggests. Like, so I think the problem, like, is the Evoke Elementals, right? Like, that's the core of this, is the Evoke Elementals. You can argue about the other stuff, like all of the most played creatures in the format are like from the last couple of years, most are from Modern Horizons too. But I think if you could get rid of the Evoke Elementals, that would at least be a huge shift in the format, because even beyond Scam, they're like powering the Cascade decks, they're powering the Up a Beanstalk decks. Like most of the top decks in the format are looking to abuse these Evoke Elementals, which kind of wraps back around to what Krim said, where you're Yu-Gi-Oh-ing, right? You don't have to actually like spend resources on your spells because you're just playing all these free spells, or these spells that get this huge discount. Do you think that just getting rid of the Evoke Elementals or eroding them would save the format? Like, would that be it? Like, if the Evoke Elementals just disappeared, Rakdos Scam disappears along with it, is Modern good then? Or is there even more to it than that?
So one thing, I just want to correct one thing. A common misconception about our metagame is it takes into account league data. It does not take into account league data. So it's all of the Moto Premier events and any big tournament results. So
I
like
even had that misconception. Oops.
Yeah, so if you're looking at like maybe only like preliminaries or challenges, it's slightly different. But we basically filter all the leagues because the leagues are not representative of winning deck lists because you just got a 5-0. Yeah, so the Scam percentage is real, right? It's 20% of the premier Magic Online events, and then whatever big paper tournaments like NRG series, things like that. But league data is excluded. That's why you don't see like, I don't know, random jank like Jun sitting up here. But to Seth's point, so Evoke Elementals is one thing, but the format is just hostile to X1s. Before we had this Evoke Elemental stuff, what did we have? We had Ren in 6. Right, Ren in 6 was prevalent for picking off all the X1s, and no one even plays Ren in 6 anymore. It kind of like sucks because you use the other cards to pick off the X1s, and no one's playing X1s anyway. My big brain meta thought is to play Dark Confidant again because no one expects the X1. Like you know, like if everyone plays Days or whatever, like you don't have to play Days. You just like pretend it's in your deck.
Oh man,
I feel like everyone's kind of metagame themselves out of this, and like you don't even need to run the X1 removal, because but. Ren in 6, Orcish Bowmasters, another good X1 policer. So like, when's the last time you saw Birds of Paradise? It's insane for anyone to run that card. Delighted Halfling is actually the best mana dork in the format because it's a 1/2. It takes half of your Fury to get removed. But yeah, X1s are just gone. So even after we lop off the Elementals, You still can't play like half like the green decks because you can't play a mana dork. You can't play any utility creature. They all got to be like X2s at least.
I mean, except unless you're Ragavan, right? Does Ragavan still get played?
Ragavan still
Yeah.
sees
Okay,
play,
but that's because
yeah.
like he snowballs out of control if you don't remove him.
So your X ones have to be like the truth, like the Ragavan, like I don't know. I mean, I think there are many problems with modern. Yeah, like sure, maybe X ones are it's hostile to X ones, but I don't think that like if all of a sudden X ones become playable, like do you think that just makes modern better?
I think it would.
deck.
Yeah, it would maybe add some diversity, I guess. Like maybe more like we've seen like collected company type of archetypes, and maybe Coco's just been power crept out of the format. But we've seen like collected company style decks pretty much disappear. Like people don't really play decks like that anymore. And I think part of it is you can't really stick the mana dorks to support the collected company plan. So I think maybe stuff like that would be a positive development. Like if you could play the mana dorks, maybe like elves could be a thing. Maybe Coco decks could be a thing again. When right now, I guess the closest is basically Yogg, and even Yogg, like, it plays Deleted Halfling. It doesn't play it caught all of the ignoble hierarchs, noble hierarchs. It used to be a staple of that deck. They don't play them anymore because they just always die between all the Furies and all the Orcish Bowmasters. There's just no sense. It's actually kind of crazy to play those cards. So I think it would, like, expand the card pool to some extent. Like at least those cards would be in the conversation. I don't know if it would like fix everything, but I think it would be a positive. Do you think, Richard, so let's say they got rid of Fury and maybe the X1 punishment. Maybe, what if like these creature decks were playable? Do you think that would open up a world where maybe creature decks, elves, merfolk, some sort of aggro deck could fight against Crashing Footfalls or Cascade Beanstalk style decks? Or like, let's say we ban the Evoke Elementals. Do those decks just like take over and become the new scam because no one else can keep up with them? Like, what do you think would happen if we actually just deleted scam from the meta?
So there's always a scam. And by scam, I mean like the baseline deck you're supposed to play against. So before scam, I believe it was Murktide, if I'm remembering the metagame history. And like Murktide is a reasonable, fair deck that you play against, and like you got to beat it. But it's like not unreasonable you just play removal, you play card advantage, you try to combo them, whatever, right? Like you can beat it on a normal axis. I think a Murktide police deck is good. Splinter Twin used to be a police deck. Jund used to be a police deck. Like depending on your like how unfair you thought Splinter Twin was, there are police decks that are like nice and like reasonable Magic, right? Like if you sit down and someone plays Murktide against you, you're like, yes, this is a game of Magic the Gathering. If you sit down and get triple thought seized and are like sitting there and then you get like Blood Moon right after, you're like, this is not a game of Magic the Gathering. So
I don't know
like
about that.
let's say Merfolk somehow becomes the police deck. I think we're fine with that, right? Like,
Yeah, I would be.
I mean, would you, unless you get like Delver templated out every game and you're like very upset that all your cards get countered, but I think that's much better than scam.
I don't even
So
know
is that it?
like
Go ahead, Grim.
okay. I don't know if I like scam. Obviously I think scam is a miserable deck to play against as well, but mostly just the elementals, right? So I think if you just tie it back to just getting rid of the elementals, I think that the format would be at least a lot better than where it is now. Because if at the end of the day, I guess, is scam a mid-range deck or is it a combo deck or a synergy
It's a mid-range deck.
It's mid-range, right? So like, okay,
it's like, okay, if we got rid of scam and then Cascade Beanstalk was the best deck in the format, that's also stupid. We can't have
that's
that.
still not fun,
right? Like that's also equally dumb. So we need to make sure what's left is fun. Like, let's say Yawgmoth is the deck that's left. Is that?
well,
Why?
okay, fun will
that
always
might be the best
relative.
we could hope for, right? As far as play patterns, like
Fun,
Like,
fun
if
will
it was
always
Tron or Titan or something, like you don't really want that, right?
no, but I
I
mean,
mean,
like again, fun is relative, right? So like the problem is that these maybe the issue is to not. This is gonna sound wild, right? But like we don't ban anything, we unban everything. Modern Horizons 4 or whatever that's coming out. 3, is it 3 or 4? I don't remember. The next Modern Horizon set, you just power creep out these. Like,
but
right? Because modern's the wild, wild west, right? You're already playing Yu-Gi-Oh! Everyone's just firing things off left and right. I don't think you can save modern anymore, right? Because let's say now you get rid of the elementals, just like you had mentioned. There's already another deck that's being, like, is just waiting in the hangars to be busted. Almost everything that is going to be busted in modern is going to be abusing the mana system or a free spell or something along those lines. So maybe there isn't a way to save modern. Just let it power creep itself out and blow itself up.
I love modern though. I haven't gotten to the point where I'm ready to just give up on modern. And I think like if you look at just the top of the meta, the most played decks, there are still some, at least by modern standards, fair deck there. Like Burn, Murktide is still like a solid tier 2 deck. So there's
a solid
there's hope.
tier 2
There's
deck,
like,
by the way.
I mean, it's like the 9th most played deck or something in the meta. So it's like there. It's real. It's not scam, but it's real. But I do think that's like an interesting problem, right? Like, what do you think about Footfalls? That's technically the number 2 most played deck. That and Beanstalk are like neck and neck behind Scam, significantly behind it, like around 7% of the meta, but they're neck and neck for a second most played deck. Are those healthy play patterns? Like they have slightly different play patterns, but really they're both trying to like turn 3 Cascade into their big thing, right? That's kind of like the TLDR, and then have this Footfalls is more of like a actual tempo deck that's trying to close out the game quickly, when Beanstalk is more of like this almost like, I don't even know, combo value engine deck. But like, are those decks healthy play patterns, or are we just like pining? Are we just being boomers? Are we pining for the old modern where, remember, it used to be like turn 4? That was the rule. We don't want decks to win before turn 4 or do their big thing before turn 4. That was kind of like the rule. That's not how modern plays now. Are we just wishing for something that can no longer exist?
Yes. I think the problem is we knew, like, having played modern at its inception, right, when it was a rumored format all the way up until God knows when, like I think there's just the problem is that we miss that, right? But like we're pining for this nostalgic modern that, we kind of thought was fair, and realistically, it is fair nowadays, but I don't think we're gonna get back to that. That's why I was saying, like, no matter, like, let's say we ban the elementals, I don't think that takes us back to that. We have to ban a lot of things for us to get back to whatever that was. Back to when Jace the Mind Sculptor was not allowed in the format, when Bitter Blossom was on the ban list, right? So we're talking about a whole lot of bannings. You pretty much the ban like 2018 forward, like that.
That's because you don't like the play pattern of 2023. But I would think in terms of balance, we're actually very, very close. If you just remove Scam for a second, like the tier 1 decks are coming at like 5 to 7%. There's like 1, 2, 3, 4. There's a whole bunch of decks at the 4% range, another 5 decks, and then another 5 decks at 3%. I would argue one of the problems with modern is it's too viable. And what I mean by that is, like, you can build a deck to beat Scam. Like, Scam is easy to beat. You just play lots of card advantage. You just go ultra fair. And then you just get raffle stomped by Cascade Beanstalk, right? And then, like, you play something to beat Cascade Beanstalk, and then you get, like, raffle stomped by, like, Enchantress or some, like, garbage pile that, like, just, like, has your number out for you. And it's like, that's the problem with modern. Like, you can't build a reasonable deck with, like, high win percentage because the decks are so powerful. You kind of need to, like, sell out your deck to beat it, essentially, and then you lose percentage points against like every other deck in the format. And I think that's the fundamental problem with Scam. Like, Scam doesn't win that much, and people oversell out to beat it, and then they like get hosed by the rest of the format because the format is so diverse. Like, how do you beat Beanstalk, Living End, Tron, Hardened Scales, Mono Black Coffers, like dimensions you can't even like interact with? Like, it is so difficult. So maybe the problem is modern is too diverse, and that you just gotta accept that your win rate is 50% and move on. Like, you just cannot win or interact with like half the decks. Like, half the decks you can interact with, the other half you just give up and like die to the Jund way.
I think though, like, yeah, the problem is the way people do try to solve that problem. And I agree with you. Like, there is this diversity. The way people try to solve it in modern is just by not caring what their opponent does. And that doesn't necessarily leads to the 2 ships passing in the night, like not really like trying to interact. And I know people say this is the most interactive modern ever. in part because of the evoke elementals, which I guess are technically, if you really think about it, sort of interacting just in maybe too powerful of a way. But the way people solve that problem is just like, okay, I'm just going to be Amulet Titan, and I'm just going to do my thing, and I'm going to play my Amulet, and I'm going to Titan, I'm going to combo off. If you can stop it, well, that's unfortunate. Otherwise, I'm going to kill you. Or I'm going to play Hammer Time, like a deck like that. And even that's not like a great solution, right? I think that's the default because you can't realistically fight all these different archetypes. You're just like, I'll just ignore what everyone else is doing, and I'll mostly just try to do my own thing and win on turn 3 and like hope for the best. And then you're kind of back to Yu-Gi-Oh again in some ways, like kind of getting back to that same. We keep coming back to where we started in some ways. Do you think there's? What were you going to say, Grim? I'm sorry, I kind of cut you off there before. Did you have a thought on that? Okay.
I mean, that's exactly it, right? You do one thing and we go back to Yu-Gi-Oh land, right? so like,
do you think there's a way out of this? Like, so we've talked about banning some things. Do you think there's any chance we're getting another Modern Horizons in 6 months or something next spring? Is there any chance that's going to be the solution? Is there anything they could print or add into Modern, like from Legacy/Vintage, that would solve this problem? Like, would Force of Will be a positive thing? Would that help this meta? Would Wasteland to fight against Amulets and Mono Green Trons and so forth, would that be a positive thing? Are we at the just like, I don't know, I sort of feel like the power level is so ridiculous as it is, and so many new cards are dominating, we might as well just pull out all the stops, like dump the Legacy cards in there, clear off the ban list, and just go like full force, right? Is there any reason not to do that at this point?
I mean,
you might as well. We've thrown away the old Modern meta, right? Like the fear of unleashing all Legacy cards is like people can't play their old pet decks anymore or whatever. But like that's way gone. Like Modern Horizons is taking care of that for us.
Yeah.
So you might as well just unleash the whole thing and make Modern the new Legacy. But I thought part of the reason, okay, this is gonna be laughable, but I thought Modern is supposed to be accessible.
Is it not?
Dexter Wagon has $1,000. Scam is like $1,500. But by introducing like all these like super old cards that are like Legacy playable into Modern, you just increase the price of the format further. Like, is that a consideration? But if you just ignore price and just assume they made I don't know, Modern Masters 4 or whatever, added all the Legacy cards and made them free, which they won't. Would that solve the metagame? I feel it would just make it way worse. You're just accelerating it even further, right? Like,
yeah, no, that is true. But could you like targetedly print things to fix the problem? I guess that would be more ideal. You're like, oh, we'll print this thing that'll solve all of Modern's problems.
Isn't that what Modern Horizons was?
Yeah,
well,
solved all
it
the
kind of just
problems
created all the problems. Yeah.
Technically it did. It did though. It solved the problems and then it presented new ones.
Do you remember the Simpsons where like Bart got this like lizard thing and then it like ended up eating all the pigeons and then it was like an invasive species and they're like, oh, we're just gonna get like snakes now to eat the lizards and then we'll get gorillas to kill the snakes. That's kind of what we're doing, right? We're just like going down this like eventually we're gonna get to the gorilla mode and then what do you do once you got your town full of gorillas because you were trying to get rid of this like little lizard that wasn't actually that big of a deal? Like that's where we're heading, right? As we get more and more of this, if there isn't something that breaks the cycle.
That's where we're heading? We're already there, aren't we?
Like, are we already in gorilla mode?
You need to rotate Modern, essentially.
Yeah, like that's. I think that's the biggest problem here. Like Richard actually has a very good point there, and I think that's how you solve this.
But if the latest set has all the broken things, how do you rotate it?
Rotate only Modern Horizons. So
they
like,
don't even want to rotate standard.
Blanket ban the entire last year of Modern.
Honestly, so Modern Horizons,
right, though, right? Yeah,
right.
Yeah.
Like if you rotate Modern Horizons, so 1, 2, 3, right? You maybe you make the Modern Horizon sets a little smaller. You split them into 2, right? And then so now there's 2 sets of Modern Horizons every year or whatever. And then you cycle out Modern Horizons 1, right? Then you welcome in Modern Horizons 4. I think you just slowly start cycling it out of Modern Horizons, and this is the way you make Modern Horizons rotate without having to deal with the misery that is Scam 25/7.
That would be interesting.
Yeah, so the problem, so we've hinted on these, right? So one problem is no mana. We're not using mana for anything. So you can sling whatever spells you want off curve. you can't fix that by printing more cards. The other problem is too much card advantage. So much card advantage that pitching a card for mana is like free game, right? Like we've had these cards in the past and they're part of combo decks, like Simian Spirit Guide, right? You pitch that card because you have a 2-card combo that you're going to win the game with. But we are in the ridiculous state where you're literally pitching cards as Simian Spirit Guides in fair decks. Right? You're like, actually, I'm gonna grind you out here by like pitching half my hand, right? And you're like, how does that make any sense? Because you have like the One Ring and you have Beanstalk to like refill your whole hand. That also, I don't think you can fix it by adding new cards. Like, what would it have to be like a colorless 1-drop beater or something that like hoses all of these things, and then everyone would have to play that, and your format didn't get any better. So I think you need to add answers in every color, which is like very tough. And like not every color, but like every archetype as well. Like something a combo deck would play and an aggro deck would play. That seems ridiculous. So I think you just ban the One Ring, you ban Beanstalk, you ban the elementals.
Yeah.
And then you go from there, and you make sure
So-
the next Modern Horizons doesn't power creep in this way. Like the power creep should have been a 2-mana 4/4. You know, like
Yeah.
something that still uses the systems of Magic called resources that we've been using this whole time, which is cards and mana, right?
I mean,
Is
that's
that
okay,
not
I
just
think.
doing
They
what
printed
I've said then?
territorial Kavu and it doesn't even see play. They did
Just
print
give it
two
one
and a
more
5/5.
Give it one more power.
But again, like, is that like not legitimately just the same as what I was talking about earlier? You just rotate Modern Horizons.
Yeah, but
'Cause
that takes too long, Crib. You got to rotate 1, 2, and then 3.
I think the other big issue with rotating, which I think I'm intrigued by the idea. I don't know how you sell adding rotation to a non-rotating format without people freaking out when apparently like that's people's biggest issue with standard, where your decks cost a couple $100 as they rotate, and that's like, oh no, like the economy is the issue, right? Like that would
that's
be my
already
biggest
happening.
concern.
That's already happening.
What's already
Because
happening?
The rotation, right? Because the people that thought that rotation was never going to hit their format, well, their deck's not even viable anymore. That's super
No,
The
that's
rotation.
$2,000 Judd deck is
That's-
crying in the corner, guys. What's the price
Yeah.
of Tarmogoyf?
And yeah, well, now actually change, which is weird. But yeah, why is that? Because essentially that deck has rotated. It's not different. It's not
That's-
any different.
That's true. Although if you look at like Rakdos Scam, the cost of that deck is almost all new cards. Like fetch lands are actually relatively cheap now compared to their historic prices. The cost of that $1,500 price tag, it's like Ragavans and Bowmasters and Shieldred and Fury, and like that's what's really driving up the prices. So I wonder if Wizards would be, I don't know. Like, do you think Wizards would go for that? They want people to buy these cards. That's actually the next thing I want to ask you guys. Like, how do you think Wizards views this? Do you think they view the Evoke Elementals in Modern Horizons 2 as a failure? Or are they like, it's the best-selling set of all time, or it was before Lord of the Rings? Like, is this a smashing success? Like, they haven't banned these cards, even though people have been asking for it literally for 2 years now. Like, about Ragavan, there's been something for Modern Horizons. No, they haven't really banned them. Like, what do you think Wizards' opinion is? Like, are we trying to solve a problem that Wizards doesn't even see as a problem, and they see as like, wow, this set crushed it. Like, well done, team, on Modern Horizons 2. Let's do it again for Modern Horizons 3.
I think they actually probably don't see it as a problem. My reason behind that is I think Modern is viewed as this format where you just let everything go, right? You just run wild and you just pop off and do whatever the heck, right? And if by those standards, I mean, you are doing that. You're running wild, you're popping off, you're doing some wild nonsense, and I don't know, that's probably a success, right?
I mean, it definitely sold a lot. I'm sure they view that part as a success.
Here's my view of Modern. It's the least sucky of 60-card formats.
That's how.
like
What?
Isn't that bad?
No, it's not.
You're like, I don't really want to play this, but like, what else? I'm gonna go play Standard? Like,
Yeah,
I'm gonna
standard.
go play
Whoa, don't
Pioneer?
poo-poo
Like,
standard. Don't poo-poo standard. Standard is
The
way
least-
better than modern
I've played
is
so
right
much
now.
Standard already. I guess I've played against Elementals for like God knows how long, right? But I don't know.
Standard
I
is
feel
so much better.
Remember the glory days of Modern, where Modern was the best format in Magic? Like,
I do remember
Hands
those
down.
days.
right now it's like a meme format that us old timers like hang on to. I don't.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I don't know. Like, I think Wizards thinks. Hopefully, Wizards thinks like short term there's some kind of problem here. No, like short term, no problem because they're making money hand over fist. But long term, there's probably a problem if all your biggest modern supporters are like, well, this format's kind of suspicious and we need something to fix it. But maybe that's a good thing because we're all looking forward to Modern Horizons 3 to fix this, and then we'll buy all the cards to fix our format.
Yeah.
And then it'll just be the same thing again.
That might be the
Like it's that example, except like Wizards is the zoo or whatever, and they're selling you the snakes and the gorillas and everything every single time. So they're like, yeah, get them.
Yeah, they profit off of all. They have the snakes and the monkeys and the gorilla, like all the way up the curve. Yeah, I mean, like, because remember, like, they designed the evoke elementals for modern. They're in Modern Horizons. When it comes to like Hogak or something, I remember when Hogak destroyed modern for those like few months, and that was like, oh, we made this card for Commander. We didn't really even consider it being a modern card. That makes sense. Like I can get behind that. Like, yeah, it's still, maybe you should have thought it through a little bit more since you know it was a Modern Horizons card. But still, I get that you weren't making it for modern. These cards were like specifically designed for modern. And now they're arguably breaking modern. So it makes me nervous about Modern Horizon 3 solving all of our problems because I'm not sure that I think maybe this is what Wizards wants. Like maybe this is good. Like, oh, we shook up the format. Look at all these new cards seeing play. Technically, there's a lot of new decks seeing play. Like if you think of Modern Horizons 2, Scam wasn't a deck. Crashing Footfalls wasn't a deck. Cascade Beanstalk wasn't a deck. Yawgmoth, that's a Modern Horizons 1 deck. Like all the meta is new decks. Like, so if the problem is, modern is too stale and it doesn't change enough, well, this certainly shook up the format, maybe not in the way that people want. So I'm a little skeptical that Modern Horizons 3 is going to be the savior just because I don't know. I kind of could see a world where Wizards thinks replicating Modern Horizons 2 is the smartest move. And maybe it is from their perspective. What about this? So, Krim, you mentioned just giving up on modern. Should we, as people who love modern, should we just be trying to recreate what we consider the glory days of modern in Pioneer? Is Pioneer like, is it what modern, can it be what modern was when a lot of people, the time when people were nostalgic for it, that peak era before all the Modern Horizon stuff, should that be the focus? Should we just be switching formats?
I mean, first off, even if we did do that, that's only a temporary fix because there's still a lot of sets in Pioneer, right? So there's still a lot of nonsense going on right now in Pioneer. But
that's true.
The nonsense that's going on in Pioneer is a lot more controllable, I think, currently containable, except for a few things like Nykthos and like stuff like that, right? But at the same time, like Pioneer's got its own problems, and they aren't even working on that either. So like, if they're not going to work on the format that I think is more solvable, there's no way they're touching modern, right? And when I say give up on modern, I say either suck it up and just play the format and like what it is right now because that's what it's always going to be, or don't play it, right? Because like I think modern is just, if you like what it is now, then you're going to love where it's going to probably continue to go. Pioneer, however, I think is something you can still save, but I don't think they will. I honestly don't believe they will.
Why don't you
save
think
it
they will?
until Pioneer Horizons? Like as soon as
God.
Pioneer becomes the best format. Let's say it becomes the best format. We're like, we've done it, boys. We somehow released 4 standard set. Then Wizards is like, all right, let's get that cash money. Pioneer Horizons, baby. And then they're gonna release something that's ridiculous.
I really don't want.
And it's gonna break modern and legacy along the way as well. But whatever.
What do you think about Pioneer, Richard? Like, have you like, so when you think, when I think of you as a Jund player, Pioneer's like as close as you could get to having a Jund deck at the top of the meta. Like Rakdos it's pretty Jundy, and you're just like, oh, I'm gonna Thoughtseize and play my, my Rakdosy creatures. Does it appeal to you or not really? Like, what's your take on Pioneer?
First of all, don't sully the name of Jund with a scam in Rakdos, okay? Like first of all, it's the same Rakdos deck between Modern and Pioneer, okay? It's like pretty close. This Rakdos mid-range junk. But actually, every time I look to get into Pioneer, something always throws me off. It's like, oh, Nykthos is the best deck in format. I don't want this. I don't want to see more like Devotion Ramp, stuff like that. And then Quintarius combo. Like I don't want to see Discover Cascade Oops. Like that's just Garuda. I've seen this before. I don't want this. So I don't know. I haven't given up on Modern. Pioneer, to me, there's like no appeal. Like I just don't like the no fetches. I don't know why. I'm like some boomer with fetches. I'm like, I don't like this weird mana. Maybe I should just play some Pioneer. But it just doesn't look any more appealing. Like it doesn't it doesn't have the combo elements. I know this is gonna sound really
Yeah.
dumb because we complained about combo decks, but like I like there's a rock paper scissors, but they're beatable, right? I just don't like the scissors being so sharp that you touch the handles and your hands get cut. I don't like the rock being like a literal mountain like crushing you, right? So I like rock paper scissors as long as it's manageable. So the combo aspect missing from mid-range fest is the problem, and like to me mid-range fest is standard. So what's the differentiating factor between Pioneer and standard?
Yeah. I mean, I'm not giving up on Modern either. I still love Modern. I do think Pioneer has some untapped potential, although I worry that it will turn into Modern eventually, like you said. I think the appealing part of Pioneer to me is it doesn't have a Pioneer Horizon set. It's the one like eternal-ish format that's untouched by supplemental products, which is kind of makes it unique. For me, that's the biggest selling point, but you know it's just a matter of time until that does change. And you're right, it is sometimes like standard plus, I guess, but it does feel like more like standard than legacy for sure. So going back to Modern Horizons 3 coming up, what about some of these legacy cards? I know we mentioned it briefly, but we didn't really get into it like in depth. Like, could a Daze or a Force of Will like is more free interaction
More
the
free
solution? Do we need more free spells to stop the free? Do we need the gorilla? Yes, we need the gorilla to stop the snakes. Yeah,
I can guarantee you that if you hate what's going on now or you despise what's going on in Modern now, the last thing you want is more free stuff, right?
but like,
So
why don't we see this? So we see in Legacy, we do see some of the good new creatures also being very good, but at the same time, the Legacy meta is definitely like Fury's a fringe thing. It's under 10% of decks or something when it's 50% in Modern. Is the difference combo, Richard? Is that the difference that you have like Storm style combo decks in Legacy? Like, why is Legacy not being as impacted by these power creepy new creatures as Modern is? Even though there's certainly some impact, but not to the same extent.
This would be a good question for Joe. So knowing nothing about Legacy, my guess is because it's a Thoughtseize fair deck, you just be like, I'm just combo off on turn 1 and I know you have no interaction for me. And if you just don't Thoughtseize me on turn 1, I'll just go off on turn 2. Like it's just not doable. Like Scam is just a fair mid-range deck. So it's nothing special. It's just oppressive in that your other people are playing slower fair decks, so their hand gets ripped out, and it's just annoying. But we do see like Bowmasters like taken off in Legacy, things like that, right? I mean, there is Brainstorm, but like we do see people play Grief. Like I don't know, some of these cards like. Every time we release cards from Modern Horizons, Legacy does get messed up, but in a different way. Like it doesn't get, we don't see Scam at the top of the Legacy metagame, but the One Ring, Bowmasters, the Evoke Elementals, all those cards have an impact on Legacy as well, just in a different way. And I don't know what Seth is saying. Like, we unleash fast combos to fix this. Is that what you're saying?
The part that's appealing to me is if I look at the Legacy meta, the top deck's at like 8% of the meta. And I guess there's technically 2 Delver-ish decks. So even if you add those 2 together, Temur and Grixis, which I don't know if that's actually fair or not. There are some differences in those decks. But if you added those together, it's like maybe 15% of the meta. Like somehow Legacy has still managed to maintain this relatively flat meta where like nothing has shot up to 20% that's taking over the format, even in this era of Modern Horizons 2 and power creep. So I guess that's what I'm wondering about is like, why is Legacy maintaining diversity when in Modern we have Scam at 20% of the meta and like sort of this one dominant deck? And I don't know the answer. I wish I did know the answer.
I mean,
I wish Modern looked more like that.
I recognize the decks. I'm like, a Delver deck. Yes. A Reanimator deck. A Lands deck. Like, yes, it's like actually, okay, there's dirty Boros Initiative in there.
Yeah.
But like, I look at the Modern metagame, none of these decks existed from the glory days. Right? Like I guess Tron shed a color. Tron is sitting there. Living End is kind of there, but the rest of the decks are not from the glory days of Modern. So they don't evoke that nostalgia. Like they're just all like new. It's like Modern Horizons block constructed or something right now, right? So I think that's the problem. At least Legacy still looks like Legacy. I don't know, maybe Legacy players can chime in, but I'm like a Delver deck and it plays Delver. So I'm like, okay, yes. It plays Delver and Wasteland, a timeless strategy. Perfect.
So all right, let's move to the present. So we've been talking a lot about modern, how to fix modern. Any last like kind of main thoughts on that? Any final words on how to fix modern? Because I want to ask you how to make the best of current modern. Since we're living in this world and there's not a lot of bannings going on at this point. We still have 6 months or so until we get Modern Horizons 3, which I'm sure will be a big shakeup. But Richard, what's your secret for having fun in modern right now? Do you have any secret tech or like ideas or decks or like what are you doing in modern?
The secret is I've played Jund my entire life. I'm used to misery. Okay. No, like for real though. Like how do we navigate modern? I wanted to see if you guys have any like secret tech or secret cards.
Yes.
Like I know people are like, oh, ley line of whatever the white ley line is against Gam. It's like
Sanctity?
terrible.
That's
Sanctity,
terrible.
like ley line of the other one, the void, also bad because you do this and they're like,
Oh,
okay,
no.
monkey,
No.
hit you, blood moon, hit you, you're dead. Like they just like actually mid range you out. So we need good versatile answers. I found one, guys. I just can't build a deck around it because the colors suck. But Lavinia, Azorius Renegade. I've been playing a lot of Azorius Taxes and it's not been working very well, but this card is a house. It's a 2-mana Azorius card. It's a 2/2. Each opponent can't cast non-creature spells with converted mana cost greater than the number of lands that player controls. Leyline Binding, automatically out. Okay?
Yep.
The second clause, whenever opponent casts a spell, if no mana was spent to cast it, counter that spell. Cascade, gone. Summoner's Pact, gone. Even like randomly hit like Ornithopters for fun, gone. How do I make this into a deck, guys? This card seems like it's like a house against half the format.
That actually does hit on a lot of the meta. So
the rest of the deck sucks though. Like give me some actual like white and blue cards that are playable.
Yeah,
and don't tell me elementals. Don't tell me solitude.
Like solitude, subtle,
ephemerate. Like don't give me that.
I mean, I've played some, there's been some on the fringes of the meta, some Emiria decks that have like been relatively successful. This is like successful as in, you know, sneaks in and 5-0's a league or something. But maybe a shell like that could work where you're just kind of like playing Thraben Inspectors and Esper Sentinels and just kind of these value-y white creatures and planning on sticking your, you know, Lavinia to just shut down your opponent's game plan. And then eventually you win in the like late game with your Emiria engine or a Sun Titan or something. I could see something like that working. Could also see like, have you tried straight up taxes with like Leon and Arbiter? Is there any like Leon and Arbiter plus the new, the one that makes a treasure, the new Field of Ruin that's like 1 mana instead of 2 mana, but you get a treasure instead of a land. Like, I wonder if that could be a thing, because then that also lets you hate on the bounce lands from Amulet Titan. You can hate on Tron, which are also like pretty high up in the meta. No luck with the actual taxes.
I killed Amulet Titan because they Summoner's Pact, and then I played Arbiter and then just killed their bounce land.
Oh, that's the best feeling. Oh, so
the
good.
problem is Stoneforge Mystic like sucks. Like it's so bad. Like I need an actual clock. Everyone has artifact removal, so swords sucks. You know, Force of Vigor, all that crap. And then Leyline Binding takes care of the actual Cauldron like quite cleanly. And people just go over the top of Cauldron. Cauldron's not fast enough. You draw like 2 Stoneforges, they're dead. Unlike 2 Tarmogoyfs, which actually add to your clock. So I can't find a white or blue beater that's fast enough to end the game. And if I go Bant or something, I can't play Leon and Arbiter because I actually need fetch lands to actually fix my terrible mana. So I can't find a shell for this unless I'm like, maybe you just play Merfolk, splash white, and like throw in Lavinias for fun. And maybe that is a thing. Or you play Azorius Humans.
I was gonna just say you could play Azorius Hammer Time. Azorius Hammer Time, right?
You could.
You want to close out the game? You close out with a 10.
Well, I just play Hammer Time though. Why am I bothering with Lavinia at this point?
Because then you got Lavinia. Just because, why not? You need a good. Okay, first off, you need to have a good structure for the deck, right? And there it is in Hammer Time. You add Lavinia, and
you add all the Hammer Time cards. But then, then you got to make some cuts because you're at like 80 cards, so you cut Lavinias.
So, do you think is being 2 mana too much of a problem, or is that fine? Because like the other big hitter is Sanctifier and Vac, right? Is like super good against Scam, not as good against the Leyline Binding effects. But could you build a deck with both of those, or is the fact that like you're getting scammed on turn 1 just like too slow? Like, is that a deal breaker? Like, are we in a world where 2 drops are just not fast enough?
I think the problem is you don't have any card advantage and you die. Like there's a lot of I played a lot of Jund, and the problem is not dying too soon. I can stretch the game out, but then everyone like I somehow lose like the long mid range battle because I don't have enough card advantage. They top deck a monkey and start slamming you with it. They draw your cards, so they're able to grind better. So yeah, the Sanctifier is fine, but you need the card advantage to keep going. I don't know if you just
Beanstalk.
play some
One ring.
Add
One ring.
Beanstalk.
you add the one ring. You just add the one ring to your deck.
And you add
Uh,
Beanstalk, and then you play, your own leyline bindings.
So speaking of other cards that are house, Collector Oof is a house. There's also no home for Collector Oof. I played it in Jund. It's like hilarious. It shuts down the one ring. It shuts down like hammer time stuff. It shuts down a lot of stuff. The problem is the 2-mana 2/2 is like too insignificant. Like, you remember the days of like Snapcaster Beatdown or Dark Confidant Beatdown? Those are long gone. Like, you can't
Yeah.
Collector Oof someone 2 damage at a time to death. You need it to be like double or triple the power. But Collector Oof also is a house against a lot of stuff in the format. But the body's just so bad that it's
Yeah.
Y'all just writing it off right now, but I'm not even memeing, dude. Like okay, so you add green, you go Bant Hammer time now, and then, and so, like everything you
turn off half your deck.
just add a
Yo,
hammer.
but that's
It'll
exactly
be
it.
better.
No one expects the oof out of the hammer time deck, right?
That is true.
Right? Like
no one, I wouldn't. No.
Yeah, exactly.
Nope.
And then you play.
So the arguments play more non-bows to get them because they won't expect it.
Yeah, well, and then what's the warrior card where it's like you get to move an equipment onto a creature?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Core Sanctifier or something. Yeah.
Dude, you don't got to worry about activating your artifact. It just gets attached, right? So there you go, ban hammer time, and you get Lavinia. Problem solved.
I kind of want to just build straight up Azorius taxes now because I also think Tashana's Tidebinder is really good against a lot of the cards we've been talking about. So you'd have Lavinia, you'd have Tashana's Tidebinder, maybe like being less of a traditional tax deck and more like a weird like meta hate tempo deck. Maybe something like that could work. I'm gonna have to try to put that together because I could see.
My list. I haven't gotten it to work because like people just like randomly play Enchantress and you're like, wow. Literally cannot beat this, right?
But
there's
that's
always
like
random decks.
That's modern though. Like that's always gonna. You're always gonna run into the
but if you
random
have a
person playing their pet
like
deck.
if you're
that just
playing
gets you.
Scam, essentially, you have a chance, right? You take it from their hand and you kill them before that happens. Or if you're playing a counter spell, you're like, I'm just gonna wait for it. Azorius can play counter spells, by the way. But there's like some gameplay. But I'm just like, actually, I just might as well scoop after game one. I literally cannot do anything about you.
So what you're saying is you should play Scam.
Kind of.
Just
I got another tech for you guys. Phyrexian Crusader. Okay, 3 mana.
I love that card.
Pro red white. Okay, that shuts down almost every removal in the format. Leyline Binding, Solitudes, Furies, Terminate can't get you. So
the new Dreadbore can't touch it either.
Yeah, like it stops like literally the whole format. The problem is it's Infect, so then you gotta now play Infect. It's really hard to play a Tarmogoyf and then with a straight face play Phyrexian Crusader afterwards and then try to
win. Hear me out. If you think that's humorous, wasn't that the tech, and that's why Golgari Infect was popular when Solitude and Fury were running rampant. So now, you said Tarmogoyf. I don't know what that is. You meant Plague Stinger, right? Because.
I don't want to play Infect, right?
Dude.
But you can just play a normal Infect. You just play Black-Green Infect and get them.
Yeah, play Black-Green Infect. There you go. Play a few of your own not dead yet or whatever, so you play a little bit of the Scam game yourself.
Oh, God.
Come on.
Golgari Infect Scam.
That's not how
throw in some
have
lands.
Hexproof cards. You would just give it Hexproof and kill them.
Fair.
I wonder if you could just be like Infect Control. Like, is there any way you could just maybe Crusaders like one of your only 2 creatures or something, and you just like load up on interaction and like trust that gets there
and pray to God
the bad
you
Plague
find your
Stingers
one of
and
2
stuff.
creatures.
Tutor it up or something. What do you think, Richard? Here's one that people have been pitching to me, and I wanted to know what you think about it. What about stuff that punishes your opponent for making you discard it, like Loxodon Smiter, Wilt Leaf Leash. I had someone send me a deck list that it was all those cards, and the goal was like, haha, scam, like no matter what you choose, I'm putting this Nullhide Ferox into play for free, and I'm gonna get you with it. Like, is there any way that those cards are gonna go up in value or are going up in value?
I think you have a literal 0% win rate against the rest of the format. Like literal 0. Like you cannot win in any circumstance if you're playing Loxodon Spiders in your deck.
But 20% of the time you'll face scam and you're gonna have a great time.
You're still probably gonna lose because they're just gonna
I don't even know if
their
that
fury
wins you.
and like smash through your Loxodon War Spiders.
That's the best part. I don't even think you win.
Yeah. That might be true. Yeah, you might just put all your creatures into play for free and still lose.
That's nostalgia. I remember the good old days of Liliana +1 and then a giant element comes in. You're like, oh.
Yeah.
Or obstinate Baloth, you know.
Because Selesnya was actually a playable deck at that time. And you could just slot in some Smiters or whatever to call it a day. But now you got to build like an entire shell around it, and that shell probably sucks. So,
well, actually, but wait, you get to do okay. Nope. Then that just leads back to
we're going back
ban
to
hate
ban
bears.
the video.
Yeah, the ban the hate bears
with spiders in there.
What if we had a Colossus Hammer?
Oh, okay.
That will fix it.
You just wait. You just wait.
Oh, all right. Any other texts, Richard, or thoughts before we move on to some fish mail?
I got a funny card for you. It's Elish Norn. So
yes.
against combo decks, they rely
5-drop
so heavily on
Elish
Boseiju. Yes. So if your hate pieces are on a big body that can't be removed, Elish Norn is where you're at. So Elish Norn prevents your opponent from triggering. You play it against Titan. It's hilarious. They cannot win. They can draw all the cards they want, and they cannot remove Elish Norn in any way. They cannot even attack through it, and they just deck themselves. It's actually hilarious. But I don't know if there's any
they can
big
attack through
body
it.
hate cards. No, it's a 4/7.
Yeah, but they could do the thing that gives your Titan +2/+0.
Yeah, okay.
And then
with enough cards, they can get there. But if you have a reasonable deck, they're not doing it, and their answers are ineffective against it. Usually, I don't know. I only played like 2 matches with this, but I felt unbeatable with that card on the battlefield.
You resolved it?
Yeah, what was I playing that I resolved? I don't even remember what I was playing. Why was I
you
playing?
didn't reanimate it. You didn't reanimate.
I was playing Abzan. That's what I was playing.
You were playing Abzan with that. Did you have Siege Rhinos? Were you
have
curving
Lingering
Siege
Soul?
Rhinos into Elish Norns?
No. None of that.
Souls.
I was trying the combination of Stoneforge and Goyf.
Ooh.
It sucked.
Richard's still trying to make Goyf work.
I have tried
I mean,
the best shell for Goyf is actually just straight up Jund. And I think Bob is the answer. I think you just throw Bobs in and just trust that no one believes you'd play an X1 in 2023, so they're not ready for it.
I can't believe you would even say this on air right now. The tech is Bob. Like
you need card advantage. There's nothing in Jund that gives you card advantage.
It draws cards, doesn't trigger Orcish Bowmasters, doesn't trigger Shieldred.
Still dies to them.
Yeah, that is. That is true.
I don't think that's gonna do what you want it to do, but I believe it. I believe in you.
So you're saying the secrets just play like 2015 Jund? It's circular. You go back to 2015.
Richard, are we on
all
Strangleroot
hot
guys
pick is new again.
Well, I think I talked to you guys about this. So I mean, Red and 6 is garbage. You don't want to play Red and 6 anymore because it just stretches out the game, and then they just one ring you to death. But Dies to Doomblade, I think, is gone. Like Shieldred, the Apocalypse, the standard Shieldred, 4 mana, 4/5, gain life, drain on card draw, is one of the best cards in the format. Like you can even see like Scam plays some, Yawgmoth plays, everyone plays it. It just dies to Doomblade, but it doesn't matter because
doesn't die to Doomblade technically.
Yeah. People keep saying that in the comments. It dies to removal without getting value on ETG. But it doesn't matter because you had to use all your removal on Monkey, on Bowmasters, on that Fury that's like a 5 whatever double striker coming at you, right? So it just lives and it just does so much work. So I think the reason I keep playing Jund is I keep wanting to play Shieldred, and it's been a house every time I play it. Like there's got to be some other like secret tech here at 4-drop that we've overlooked because it dies to Doomblade. but like is actually a house. Like Elish Norn is another good example of Dies to Doomblade.
But
The
the,
cards in the
like,
right
the thing
formats.
is, you did mention it, right? Like, Shieldred can stick in a scam deck or whatever because it has Monkey, it has Bowmaster, it has all of those things that come before it. This Elish Norn deck, I'm wondering what targets do you have that I care enough
Tarmogoyf, Dark Confidant.
I said targets that are a threat in the year 2023 to 2024. So
Seriously,
far,
though, like,
nothing.
I think, though, you might be right that maybe Dies to Doomblade doesn't apply to 2023 because every card is so strong and so snowbally that it's not like the old days where you'd play some not very good creatures as you're waiting to get your good one on the battlefield. Like, everything is good now. If it's not good, it's not going to be in a deck. So maybe there are just so many must-kill threats that maybe we do need to reevaluate cards like Shieldred. Like, Shieldred's the best example, but there's got to be other ones too, right? Like, if everything has to be killed, something's going to stick eventually. And if that thing's a Shieldred, you win the game. So we're going to have to go back through and look at like 3, 4, 5 drops and see, because so many of those cards, I mean, people just write them off. I wrote them off just offhand as soon as they're previewed. Oh, it doesn't have ETB trigger, not going to make it in competitive play. But maybe things have changed with the power creep. I think that's actually a really intriguing thing that I hadn't thought of. Anyway, I think that's our modern discussion. I think we got time, though, to sneak in a fish mail or two. Richard, can you fish mail us?
All right. If you have questions, send them to @MTGGoldfish with the hashtag MTGFishmail, and we'll get to your questions on air. Monetary Mentor. What if Wizards had a core competitive format, which was a curated, stable list of 1 to 2,000 legal cards, and that was it? Every archetype represented, reprinted every year to keep supply up, no rotation, easy to onboard.
Isn't that like Hearthstone's like core class set?
Would it get boring? I don't know what that is either.
You know how like there's a core batch of like class cards in Hearthstone?
Oh, that are
always
like
yeah.
That like literally was the core set, right? Where we reprinted the same card like 5 times in a row because we wanted them in standard all the time.
I think what this is saying, though, is like a whole format that never changes, right? Like you pick 1 or 2,000
cards that stay no matter what,
but nothing's added to it. It's just that.
Oh, it doesn't add to it.
Yeah, just like forever, it's that 1 to 2,000 cards. Wouldn't it get boring? I remember like when I first started playing Magic online forever ago, there was like this new player format you could play with, like, they gave you this intro box with like 1,000 cards, and that was all the cards, and you could play against other people that also had gotten these like intro cards. And it was fun at first, but then it got old pretty quickly because like there's only a handful of cards that are actually like good. So I worry the format would get salved. It's an interesting idea, but I think like you would run a new issue where the format is going to get salved and then it would get boring and people would stop playing it.
I like the idea of a fixed product. Like, let's say this thing costs like $30 at Walmart. It was like 1,000 cards. And then you had like 4 decks or something. And it's essentially a dual deck or whatever, but like an actual whole format that you can buy. And like, that's it. You're complete. You don't need to crack boosters, buy singles or whatever. So I do like that idea. I wonder what would happen if we let Wizards make formats like straight up. they just, because they would be designing every card that goes in there. They would be designing all the decks, right? So they're just straight up making the decks. And yeah, maybe you could reconfigure them, but you don't have that endless stream of jank or mythics or whatever to like, update your deck with, right? So that's an interesting concept.
The mana base would suck. We know that. If Wizards just designed them. Lots of tap lands, lots of snarls.
Oh God.
Okay. Next question. Konixka Jakob. Any hope that Magic will become more affordable with even staples for max $10? Is there any way that arena wildcards are somehow introduced, altered, TCG tries to fight the high prices as you can order prints, kind of similar to wildcards?
Ooh.
I mean,
what does ordering prints mean? Does that like secret layer direct to?
I'm assuming it means you can just like give
cash
them
out?
X money and they send you the card, like
cashing out of your collection.
Well, I think the other way, like you send them money and they'll send you a single. Basically, like the
secret layer.
Wizards just sell singles. The equivalent of Wizards in their game just sell singles to the players.
I don't think we ever
or whatever.
I don't think we ever want that, right? Because then that's like bad for LGSs.
It'd be bad for LGSs. I mean, I guess like
well, no, you could sell the LGS the card for $1,
and MSRP is $2 or whatever the math, right? Like how literally every other kind of retail works, right? That you sell it for less to the LGS sells it for more, but fixed price per card, like no loot boxes, essentially, no booster packs.
It's never going to happen. Not in a million years. I think the best we can hope for is going further down the path that we're going now of like printing enough of the base cards that they're cheap and then trying to do serialized cards and special versions that are expensive, like getting further down that path. Maybe I don't think you'll ever end up in a world where no card costs more than $10, but you might get close to it if you go further enough down that model. But I think booster packs are just way too profitable for Wizards to ever get rid of. I can't imagine a world where they get rid of booster packs, booster boxes, and just like sell you singles super cheap.
That's the collectible card game way, right? Like that. We're not even talking about like a Wizards thing. We're talking like a whole entire like game, like in like culture change, essentially, right?
Yeah.
But like yeah, like that like Seth had mentioned. I mean, right now outside of Shieldred, I think Standard is like actually aggressively cheap.
Yeah, we've seen a lot of good things. This is something maybe we need to do a like financy podcast at some point to talk about some of this, because we have seen overall like the prices of a lot of cards are way lower than they used to be. I've been like surprised at how cheap like dual lands are, creature lands. These cards that used to be $5-10 a piece a few years ago in Standard. You open up a booster pack and they're like 70 cents now. They're like bulk rares. I'm like, wow, seriously, it's like wild how cheap these cards are. But it gets lost in the fact that you have these few high-end cards that are like super expensive, like Shieldred. And if you need a playset for your deck, it ends up making it look like your deck's very expensive. But I think we're on a pretty good trajectory, actually, for making the game cheaper in Standard, at least.
Yeah, like I mean,
the older format playability. So Esper midrange, $500. Domain deck.
Wedding announcement, by the way, is $50 for a playset.
Yeah, Azorius midrange $300, but once you get past those, Soldiers $160, Boros $170, Mono Red $77. So there are cheap decks in Standard, but there are also some pretty expensive decks in Standard. For fixed cards, I'd say Wizards is going away from that. So the closest thing we've had to that is Commander, like Commander 2015 or whatever, right? 4 precons, that's a fixed printing. There's no loot boxing there. But as you see with Doctor Who, they've decided that, hey, we need to add like booster packs somehow. So we'll just add booster packs of the premium versions. So we do have these like fixed products, but you can see they're trying very hard to shoehorn booster packs into them. So they believe booster packs is the way of the future. And maybe we just got to accept it. Maybe it's like DLC or live service games or whatever. It's just the current evolution of what this looks like, and people have come to accept it. So you kind of need to rehaul the whole industry to make it otherwise. But yeah. All right. That's all the time we have for fish mail. So if you have questions, send them to @MTGGoldfish with the hashtag MTGFishmail. And we'll also be doing some kind of mailbag episode in the future. So look out for that. We'll explicitly send out a tweet for that. So we can go through some of your questions in more depth here, since we don't normally have too much time at the end of podcasts.
Yeah, we've heard your feedback that you want to get more fish mail, so we'll do a whole episode dedicated to it at some time in the near future. So get your questions ready. Anyway, I think that brings us to the end of episode 461 of the MTG Goldfish podcast. So Richard Krim, thanks for hanging out. Thanks to everyone for listening. Thanks to Card Conduit for supporting the show. And we'll be back next week to talk about whatever goes on in the world of Magic. So until then, have an amazing week, everyone. And this is the crew signing out.